Hello, everyone. We're back. Another episode in the Design Lounge. This is under the topic Futurecast. So we're going to try to forecast a little bit, seeing what's coming next. And I have a great guest to talk about that. Not only does he have a tremendous background, but some of the things he's designing, some of the restaurants, hotels, hospitality, he has a good look into what that looks like. So for those that don't know, I'm talking to Craig of St. Marie. Those that don't know who you are, introduce yourself and let them know what you do.
Right on. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Craig Stanghetta. I'm the founder and creative director of a commercial uh, concept and design studio called St. Marie. We started in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada, and that was about 15 years ago. Now we also have a second office here in Toronto. I'm saying here, but I'm actually Montreal right now. I've been traveling a lot, so I'm a little discombobulated. But yeah,
Yeah.
we've got offices in both cities, and we say we're both a concept and envisioning company, as well as a sort of full service commercial design practice. And the way we look at it is the sort of root of our practice is in human experience. I
Totally.
come from a background in the theater. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I'm not a trained designer, but I've built the practice around
Oh,
those principles, and and we still adhere to that today. It's a little bit more sophisticated these days, and formal, and I've got the right people along for the ride to help me pull some of this stuff off. But it still holds true that foundationally we're all about how we design for how human beings experience space.
yeah, I love that. I want to get into that background. I didn't realize that you weren't trained, which I think is probably, like I said, to your benefit a lot of times. But we're talking about this feature casting. I just want to go right into it.
Hmm.
We talked about before we got on, sometimes these projects takes years to even happen, and all of them don't even come into fruition. But once they do get greenlit and once they do become, live, what are some of the key characteristics, some of the key components of a successful food and beverage hospitality space that gives it that staying power? Because not only do a lot of them not even make it, but I'm here in Arizona, right? We have tons of new
Hmm.
restaurants, tons of new hotel concepts all the time. They get here, there's fanfare for 3 months, then you don't hear about it again.
Hmm.
So you've created some spaces that have been around for years. What are some of those characteristics that you see from a design perspective, and then even from a business perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think first of all, um, for a little added context, I also co-own a hospitality company, which is based in Vancouver,
Yeah,
and we have
three
four.
restaurants, right?
Yeah, three and a half. Was sort of
Okay,
two of them are in one location,
okay.
and then two other larger ones that are at either side of the city. But essentially, the reason I say that is because it sort of gives you a skin in the game perspective when you're doing it,
Totally.
and I think that's part of the way that we ended up in the world of design was coming along to support people in how you would open a space. And because I didn't have formal training, I was sort of there as somebody just to like kind of like not only uh, look at it through an aesthetic standpoint, but functionally, what is gonna again how we sort of capture the narrative or the emotional connection to people. What sort of what void are we filling in the market, and this notion of being able to listen and be empathetic to not only your client standpoint, but because they're coming to the table with a lot of passion, and usually when they're opening their own spot, it's because they feel a strong conviction that they've got something to bring to the table. So if you could tap into that, and if you can really empathetically understand what their superpower it is, what their real ability is, what their vision is, their perspective is that only they can execute, and find a way to make that come alive in the built environment. I still fundamentally believe that's the key, and um, that sort of transcends scale even, right?
Yeah.
Foundational to the whole thing, in my opinion, is strong conviction in terms of you know a vision, like something that's exciting to unlock and pursue. You also need the ballast of that, like you also have to put on your like hardcore pragmatic hat about, okay, I want to find what the sort of economic drivers are for the property or the business, and what the kind of headwinds could be, what the challenges are, what's happening competitively, all of the stuff that's less sexy and glamorous than the beautiful outcome.
Yeah.
But being able to live in those two worlds at once, I think, is critical. That's the point of view that we really adhere to, is being able to, at the same time, be completely untethered from reality in some respects, right? Just
Gotcha.
be
Yeah.
guy imagining what the possibilities are, just to be completely free. And that, my background in the theater really, I think, prepared me for that, because you were
Yeah.
allowed to live in the realm of the imagination. In fact, it was downright encouraged, and you were working with groups of people about making that come to life. And then you had to, when I was doing this, I was both like working in the theater as an actor.
Okay.
At the time, I studied like a Bachelor of Fine Arts, but then there's all the commiserate sort of stuff that comes with it. Sets, lighting design,
Yeah.
collective choreography, all that stuff. Anyway, my point is that there's an ultimately the the opening night shows up and you're going on, right?
Totally.
But you feel that pressure too much and you don't allow yourself to live sort of freely and imagine what the possibilities are, then why would an audience ever want to come along with you for the ride and be sort of swept into the world of what you're creating? So at the same time, if you're not technically prepared and things are clunky and choppy, and that could be a technical side of how the show is run, or you may, like a stark example of it is if somebody forgets their lines, in the middle of a performance, nothing takes you out of the suspended disbelief more than something like that,
Yeah.
right? So we sort of came from this background where it was about freedom to imagine,
Totally.
collaborate, but then you got to be practiced and rehearsed and dialed and ready to go. So that matching of the looseness to the discipline, and
That
I
that
believe
right,
that.
that right and left brain, right? That creative aspect, but also still the technical math side, if you will, the science side of it. I was going to ask you your background as an actor. Is that the greatest gift as you transition to design? That freedom and almost of creating your own world, creating your own space, and immersing yourself within it. Is that what you've taken the most from that to apply to what you do now?
I think to a great degree, for sure. Like foundationally, that idea of deep collaboration, of working with others, of like having to, yeah, like and that ability to be free and loose in some ways. I think that was a big deal. But when we're thinking about this notion of designing for the future and what we do that makes us successful, the more I thought about it, the more I came back to collaboration
Okay.
and being able to leverage other people's expertise and a sense of communication and trust among collaborators. And I think that I also learned a great deal of that from that my time, studying that and working in that capacity. And so I think those two things are the sort of bedrock for what's helped us drive the growing the business in the studio.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you started almost like as a consultant, if you will, right? I know you. I believe you were a chef or a cook in high school back in the day. But I guess what I want to know is, as being a theater background, as also having an aspect to running your own business, what is the percentage or part of or your job as a designer when it comes to storytelling and branding, right? Like, how
Mhm.
much of it when you're commissioned for a job are you taking on, saying, okay, yeah, I know you need us to design this space and we're going to collaborate and come together on what this needs to look like, feel like, act like. But that's a lot of branding, right? That's a lot of, like I said, creating a space, creating a world, if you will, and the intention and thought behind it when someone feels a certain way and moves a certain way within a space. How much branding and storytelling are you guys doing?
Well, I think it's important to differentiate the idea of brand strategy
Hmm.
and sort of what we like to look at as this sort of building a world
Okay.
of place, or a
Yeah.
narrative of place, so to speak, versus graphic design, building collateral, and that kind of thing. Now,
Yeah.
there's great companies that do graphic design and brand strategy and brand curation. Um, and but so what we do is we do a lot of the conceptual work. So
Okay.
we're very comfortable in that, and I wouldn't be comfortable owning my own businesses on the hospitality side if I didn't have a facility for that, because I think that's foundationally what it's all about. And what people want is to be immersed in a kind of world that feels fully actualized, right?
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of that part, and we sort of call it in our business. We have a department that's called the concept envisioning and programming. So
Okay.
it's the big ideas, it's
Yeah.
like, how does this exist in the market? Where's the opportunity? And so thinking of it conceptually, defining and showing the vision, right? Trying to make a roadmap for that,
Yeah.
uh, from a vision standpoint, values, that whole thing, which is, you know, really brand strategy thinking. And then, but where we differ is we look at it programmatically, like what happens in space to make that concept come alive, and what are the user experience touch points that
Hmm.
need to happen there to actualize that concept, to not let it just be like a pie in the sky story, but
Yeah.
when you're participating in it, that there's little details that people experience, and that there's an outcome. And so I'll give you an example of a project that we've recently done. We haven't launched it. I just photographed it the other day with a great photographer here. Um, Called Reformed is a new project, and there's a
Okay.
there's a company here called Sweat and Tonic, and they do a really cool class-based, big sort of gym, highly hospitality rooted,
Okay.
but they're bringing that idea of hospitality and community to fitness. So it'll be like
Okay.
Pilates, yoga,
Yeah.
ride, hit, like all that thing in one. Then there's a spa function, and then there's little, cocktail bar and co-work areas. So really community based. But the owner was like, well, I have this idea of creating the biggest Pilates studio in Legree based Pilates studio in North America, and I
Okay.
think Pilates is amazing, and I want to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
So they come to us with like a pretty broad, like
Ask.
ask, right?
Yeah.
But those are the kind of challenges we love, because we're like, okay, well, if we can create this fully immersive environment, then we're setting up like an ability to design something that is without precedent.
Yeah. Totally.
Don't need to be like, hey, it's like that other place, or it should look like this, or you know what I mean, where you don't have to worry about reassuring people that it's going to work because they've seen it somewhere else in the market. So we
Yeah.
start to engineer the concept from the get go, in lockstep with their ops people and our team. And so we look at this idea weirdly full circle. I'm thinking about the notion of that there's a theatricality to it, that they put
Hmm.
the coaches on stage in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
that the coaches are the ones that come with the pedigree and the background, that people trust them. They create a following. It becomes part of their ritual for people to go and train with these people. And so, what the coolest thing that this guy did was he elevated the coaches,
Yeah.
like literally in
Yeah.
in these spaces, but also like he's committed to, he wants to pay them more. He wants to celebrate them. He wants to showcase them, which is like a great way to create a moat around your business in a way. So all cool stuff that's all like business ideas that we're
Yeah.
saying, okay, well now we have to keep finding ways to bring that into this immersive world in the fitness realm, and build a whole story and narrative around that. And so we did that with like how we set this porous glass through the storefront so you could see right through into the studio,
Okay.
and elevated the whole stage, and made it like this, like almost like this proscenium arch, like this theatrical point of view to the stage, and then this RGB lighting, which is crazy controllable. So, like we were saying before I got on the call, I was at the weekend concert with my
Yeah.
my daughter last night, and the light effect, right? Like
Yeah.
the theatricality, the cinematic nature of that kind of show we brought that to this kind of class, and all the lighting's controlled and it's dynamic, and there's these large screens that are like highly immersive. So
Yeah.
so that's the way that we start with like a business idea, and work in lockstep with our clients to be like, well, let's bring the whole world to life, and know that we're gonna support and enhance the business ideas through the built environment, while also keeping them surprising and cool and future forward, so that we're not like behind the eight ball on those things. We want to be like working with our clients to be leading on what could be the next thing, rather than trying to follow trends, which we feel is
Yeah,
like,
we hate that T word, right? So it sounds like your daughter thought you were going to weekend for her, but it sounds like you were basically getting inspired yourself.
I
Realistically,
research, yeah,
it was a win-win. It was R&D.
yeah.
It's when you talk about that, what that brought me to immediately. There is a bar here. It just won like best new bar in America. It's called
Mhm,
Carry On, right?
mhm,
And you go to this space, and it's in downtown Phoenix. And once you get to the door, it is a play on like a 1970s jumbo jet themed like
oh
experience,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you go, you walk in. There's a velvet rope. There's an orange door. You walk in. You're greeted by the staff, which they're dressed in airport attire.
Mhm,
The captain is actually the one who serves you the cocktails, and then
mhm,
it's all 1970s themed. When you sit down, you see the tarmac windows go up, and you feel the actual chairs vibrate, and it
insane,
is
yeah.
an entire immersive experience at maybe 1,000 square feet or whatever, right? You're there for whatever. But
Mhm,
I bring that up to say, these places that have the test of time, that are, they don't follow trends, they create the trends, they set the standard. It's not even that details matter, it's the quantity of details that they have. Like
mhm,
they break everything down to the nth degree, and like, how does everything kind of engulf you into this
mhm,
experience, right? How does everything transport you to? And that, like how you were saying about this, this fitness facility, like elevating the places, but they're also making them like celebrities, but also paying them. Like,
mhm.
I guess what I'm saying is everything matters. Like literally with these spaces that are the cream of the crop, like everything matters and nothing is overlooked. And if anything, they're adding everything they can, all senses, to the
Mhm.
end product. That's what I'm kind of hearing. That's why I take away when you talk about that experience you're creating with this new fitness facility.
Yeah, for sure. I think the most important thing is the conviction that you want to execute something to its
Yeah.
fullest.
Hmm.
And I mean, like, you're gonna have, if somebody has that conviction, and and like, we would most oftentimes, when it comes to food and beverage and hotels, we would steer away from letting it become overly thematic, but that being said, that category that you're talking about, I think, is emerging,
Hmm.
and it can be a niche. And I think for people that are willing to own it completely like that, I think
Yeah.
that they're going to succeed quite well, because I I think what's interesting is leveraging technology and immersive environments to actually make people have very human, emotionally engaged experiences, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's where they're winning in that respect, right? Where it's like you're being able to be transported, you're being able to be off your phone in a way, and be
Yeah.
in an environment where you're communing with other people. So in an interesting way, what they're doing is saying, we're going to use technology in some ways to help you sort of unplug from technology and get
Right.
back in a kind of human experience. And I think we often do that in sort of other ways, obviously in health and wellness environments, and or being like, let's make like a very almost analog user experience with a different kind of restaurant, right? Where it's almost like, well, there's no sense of technology anywhere in some respects. And
Gotcha.
I think there's a number of choices that you have at your
Totally.
disposal on where you're going to sort of put your heft. But to your point, that idea that executing relentlessly
Hmm.
on as
Yes.
many fine grained touch points as possible is really the key, and having a conviction about what you're there to sort of offer to the guest, to the user. that's the fundamental necessity of doing something of quality in our world, we believe.
Totally. No, I agree. I see that completely. Like I said, regardless of the path you take, and I think now it's a requirement, right? The bar is higher. In order for us to be
Yeah.
willing to unplug, right, you have to have that level, that tenacity to execute on every single aspect, whether it's analog or digital, whatever it is, thematic, whatever it is, you have to be able to execute that relentlessly in order to, as an end user, as a buyer, to convert to being fully immersed and wanting to be there. I know when you started, I believe you referenced a lot of stills for, is it Bao Bay? Is that how I say it? The restaurant?
Mhm. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. You referenced the movie The Mood for Love, and you referenced a lot of stills for
Mm.
that movie to create the space. Do you still do that today? I know you reference your style as cinematic. Do you still reference stills today? And also as a follow up, like how has your process changed from back then? I think it was 2008 to now 2025.
Yeah, it's a cool question. I mean, the the owner of that property, who was a friend of mine who I worked very closely with,
Okay.
she just loved that movie and she loved it. In terms of like how she felt like watching it, but also aesthetically was she was just taken by it, and she had this kind of idea of reimagining like her traditional kind of family food through this lens that had this like interesting, cinematic patina,
Okay.
and so she came with a lot of those things, and at that time I was just fumbling through how to do this stuff, right? I was
Yeah.
like following my instinct completely and using a whole bunch of what I had done when I was working in the theater as an actor, or creating like performance pieces, which I was always a library geek. Like
Yeah. So
I
you're,
would,
you're a big research guy.
yeah, I was a big research guy. Just I would get lost in the research all the time,
Okay.
and I was never a very, I'm just talking about academically when I was younger, even in high school and stuff like that. I would always want to do more research, more research, more research. I think probably because I also like to delay the finishing of something, right? Um,
Yes, I can
but what
relate.
I learned, yeah, but what I learned about myself was that I could pack my subconscious with a number of references, with a number of like cues or almost little talismans or clues to find your way into a world. And they didn't always have to be logically connected, but that subconsciously there would be some sort of link between those things. And so what I got used to doing with her was that she had very cool references, her own history, her
Hmm.
travel, her family photos, little
Yeah.
bits of pieces of cinema and stuff like that. So I learned how to do that, not just by myself, but in working in collaboration with somebody else, and then finding ways to translate that into a functional restaurant space. And I would say like the fundamentals of how we work now are exactly the same.
Okay.
We've had to build we had to build processes and methodology for big groups of people to do this collectively, and we've had to find ways to bring like very disparate stakeholder groups along for the ride, right? You can imagine like a boardroom of 20 people sometimes, some people just being there from the financial lens, some
Mhm.
people being there as like marketing or art direction, or guiding the vision as like a CEO or a managing director, or things like that, right? All those people that are there, or the ops people. So we've had to find ways that people trust in some of this esoteric input,
Hmm.
and then translate it into like a little bit more of a formal documentation that rallies the troops, so to speak.
Gotcha. So
And
it's not
so
as abstract.
it's not as no, it's certainly not as abstract as it was then. Like it would be a clipping from a magazine or an old photo. It was really like a little notebook of little like tchotchkes and clues and sketches and bits of
Yeah.
material and everything. So I'm not bringing those into the boardroom with the Rosewood Hotel.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's the same principle, right? Like
Totally.
finding the clues, making the connections, allowing your subconscious to do the work, like really using instinct, right? And I think and as we grow, we have to find ways that all the new tools that are emerging we allow those things to work in line with like your human instincts, right? You can't ignore them, right? We can't ignore things like AI, but we have to find ways to make them help things be even more human, even more engaging, even more like helping people find moments that they can, be around one another, like kind of like what we were
Yeah.
saying earlier, like help
Yeah.
you, yeah.
Utilize it to become to use the technology and the AI, whatever it is, to actually bring you back into space. You know what I mean, if you will. Um, yeah, that's interesting. Peeking into the future, when you talked about the T word, not really referencing that, I think more for you. What are you guys doing at St. Marie to create the future in hospitality? You know what I mean? Where you guys don't look at trends, you're creating new space, you're creating new things. Is it the types of projects you're taking on? Is it types of collaborators you're working with? What are you guys doing to kind of shape the future in this industry?
I would say that's kind of three things.
Okay.
Um, I would say the and you mentioned two of them. Essentially, as you grow a design practice, you have the luxury of having a bit of a known brand, that there's a sense of trust, and if you doing well as a design practice, you know the strict reality is you have a bunch of inbound inquiries, right?
Okay.
So it allows you to be a little choosier,
Yeah.
and it allows you to be like align
Selective.
yourself with people, yeah, that you feel are the ones that are going to be leading in their industry, that they've got the chops, or they might not have any experience, but you're like, I don't know, something about this person, the energy, the insight, the sort of like, passion that they bring to it. Sometimes you just place your bet on some of these
Yeah.
wild cards. Other times you get to be like, well, look at the background of that brand, or where these
Totally.
people are coming from, and that they've got like a great idea, and they want to be industry leaders. So that would I would say is number one, having the luxury to associate and collaborate with great like-minded people.
Yeah.
The second one is also what you mentioned, that ability to collaborate as a design practice, and specifically where we are. We sort of look at ourselves as a bit of a nucleus.
Okay.
So we don't have all of the knowledge. We don't have all of the domain expertise. But I like to think that we're smart enough to know that we don't know everything. And I
Yeah.
think that's the key, is and it's being endlessly curious and spending time meeting people, and actually getting to know them, and understanding how they work and how you collaborate with them. Um, we're doing a project right now, which is basically an art installation. It's
Okay.
inspired by this really interesting photographer, Vancouver-based guy named Greg Girard, who he's always been an inspiration for us. His photos are just kind of like eerie and beautiful, and kind of like mundane but romantic at the same time. They're just remarkable. At any rate, he launched this new book, and we're sort of doing a little bit of this installation that's in reaction to that book,
Okay.
and we're trying to create this like little like vignette where people participated in it for about 5 minutes, and sort of like somehow get transported into the world of these photos. And we need to
Gotcha.
use, sound design, lighting design, videography. We have to build the environment, and we have to sort of orchestrate this whole little thing. And so we're way over our skis on that. We never could have pulled it off even remotely without being able to really trust other disciplines and other creators. And I think the amount that you just learn in such a short amount of time, frankly, because of the pressure that you're under to
Yeah.
actualize real, um, is just so cool, right? And you're just like, okay, well, you're throwing yourself in the deep end, and I think I've always sort of done that, is like put yourself into an
Uncomfortable
unrealistically
situation. Yeah.
scenario, and then find a way to maybe eke out a win, through working deeply with other people, trusting like your team and yourself, and getting it done. And so I would say that's the other main thing, is like that endless amount of trying to learn and integrate with other creators and artists, and technicians and craftspeople, is a big deal, because you need to, you're never going to learn
Yeah.
be the best at the cutting edge of lighting technology or sort of screen technology, whatever. Like it could even be air handling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like in terms of like creating, like, if you're doing something in the wellness space, like everything like that is so science backed, and there's so much like development. So we have to be trusting and collaborating deeply.
Yeah.
So we're the third thing is that notion of being entrepreneurial, right? Is I've done some things as a business person on my own, and then have fostered a team that feels very passionate about doing things. And so we talk about coming in as partners on certain things, and looking to actually do things that we think are worth committing to. So I would say that as a studio thing is cool and interesting as a commitment, but the spirit of being entrepreneurial, I think is the third thing that helps you always be trying to find what you could do next. Just being thrilled and excited about participating in
Yeah.
developing cool ideas and working with cool people is foundational.
That endless curiosity that you mentioned, being someone from, an actor from the film theater background, what dream project, what movie would be the reference point for your dream project?
Well, I'm like a big David Lynch fan, and so I was,
Okay.
pretty upset, the earlier this year when he sort of, waltzed off into the next dimension. Or
Yeah.
I'm sure he's existentially optimistic about life after death, but still very sad. But something that would have been with him, or like, he's designed clubs and bars, and
Yeah.
so things like that. I've always liked the idea of us kind of having a bit of a full circle, coming in and designing maybe for like sort of interesting interactive kind of set for either film or, like, whatever, a piece
Yeah.
of dance or opera or theater, or like, or these things that maybe are a little bit in between. Maybe we're working on some of these projects that are less, they're a little bit less like didactic in terms of, oh, it's a cafe, or a bar, starting
Yeah.
to blur the lines between being like art, installation, performance,
Yeah.
experiential thing. And I think stuff like that, and you see a lot of like cool brands that are dipping their toes into that world, and how many like really rad collaborations are happening between,
So many.
you know right, like you say you come from the background in fashion. I think
You can't
fashion,
you can't
yeah,
deny it. Like it's
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah. And so that, like when I was in Milan this year, that was, I think, my main takeaway. I was like, yeah, it's for Salone, it's a lot of the leadership was by the world of fashion. I really appreciate what Jacquemus is doing these days. Again, quite
Yeah.
analog, right?
Yeah.
But they are embracing like technology and getting the message out there, but also having like really kind of like tactile and almost like analog, childlike ways of producing, which I think is
Totally.
really yeah. So stuff like that. I mean, that would be a one, like working with like a Jacquemus or a
Oh
brand
yeah,
like that.
Simon. Yeah, yeah. No, that's one of my favorite brands. It's one of my favorite brands. So I guess that leads to my next question, which was my last question. You have what, three and a half restaurants you said? You're doing these installations as well as, these restaurants. What is next? What can we expect for you from you guys in your firm, maybe to create or build, or what's on the horizon?
Well, my family in my hometown owned the oldest hotel
So I read
in the
that.
city. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it was. I tell people it wasn't fancy at that point. When it started out, it would have been fancy. It was a sort of grand,
yeah,
dame, the downtown of our little town, and they used to build that way, right? For in a city would be marked by, this stately hotel, and so I grew up in that environment. My uncle and cousins ran it, and as my dad's twin brother, we'd spend all of our time there. And so I really do think that the hospitality in hotels is sort of in my blood, and it's something
hmm
that I've just always love. And I love that there's this idea of like a bit of home there. You know, it's a sense of home that you're trying to create a bit of a sense of home for people while they're away. But it also has that other aspect of being completely intrepid and escapist, and that there's an endless amount of possibility there. So
Totally,
I would
totally.
say that for us is like more hotels, more finding cool ways to blend some of these disciplines. You know,
Hmm.
blend you know, athletic and leisure like things with hotel or with food and beverage and or fashion and retail with maybe yeah, like we're doing a thing in Chicago actually with Monos,
Okay.
the luggage brand. It's a Canadian-based
Yeah.
direct-to-consumer luggage brand, but we help them conceive of this entire kind of cafe, listening bar, cultural activation
Like pop
space.
up. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it's permanent. It's like it's sort
Oh,
of adjacent to their flagship in Fulton Market. So
okay.
they're sort of going all in on the notion that, you know, as a travel brand, can the idea of travel, the spirit of travel, can that be manifest in a
In
space, right?
space.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so we helped them come up with this cool concept for that, and so stuff like that I find really thrilling. And again, just either sometimes we're going to come to the table and say, you know, I like making businesses, and so I like owning them and leveraging all the stuff that we've learned to make them come to life. But and so if we're waiting around for something and I see an opportunity, I'm very committed these days as I'm a little bit like, you know, further along to like, you know, to drive those things, and then just keep hoping that really, you know, wonderful people will keep coming into our orbit that we can support, you know, bringing their worlds to life. So, yeah,
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see it. I don't have any doubt that you'll create it. Went forward, excited for the hotels, the activations. I know you talk about the fashion world. It's like they are creating these universes, right? Talking about the fashion world, they're creating these universes where you see these brands that are creating. There's not just the fashion aspect, but they have pop-ups, of course. But then they have restaurants that are, you know, they're spaces. They have
exactly.
hotels that are spaces, and so all these brands are kind of are on that where they're creating these entire worlds built out of what may have, you know, been is a derivative fashion, but now these doing other things. So I'm excited
Yeah,
to see what you guys do. Hopefully, I want to go to Salone next year. So maybe if you're going, I'll run into you there. And
100%.
until then, man, just keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks so much. This has been a really fun chat, and yeah, just really appreciate the opportunity for us to be able to like, you know, tell you a bit about our POV and yeah, clearly just excited to share some of that stuff.
No, well, we love to hear. We love to hear. Well, you have a great day, and let me know the next concert you go to.
You got it.